Welcome to Legacy Elevated. We are here to equip, empower, and inspire the next generation through business and community leaders. Legacy Elevated will revolutionize your business beyond the P&L to further shape your identity as a company and your evolution as a brand. Legacy Elevated focuses on global impact you can have by being hyper-local in charity and community while living with your future legacy in mind.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining Legacy Elevated. I'm excited today to have with us Major J.R. Valesek, and I love when we have the opportunity to meet with someone and hear from them that has experience in the real world, civilian world, and in the Marine world. Because if you know the Marines, that is a different world, right? Good morning, J.R. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, James, for having me on here today.
Yeah, our pleasure, and thank you first for your service. We're thankful for those that defend our country and our freedom.
I really appreciate you saying that. It's an absolute honor to be able to serve with these men and women of today's generation.
Yeah, and for those that may not know you, I love it. I was learning before we even started today. Can you share a little bit of your background in the military and what you specifically do with the tank battalions?
Absolutely. So it all kind of started back when I was 27 years old, back in 2003. And that was obviously post 9/11. 9/11 happened, and unfortunately, I was not physically able to join the Marine Corps right out the gate. I had a friend of mine that was a recruiter, and walked in his office, and he said, "Hey, you need to drop 100 pounds." So that's exactly what I did. I spent the next year working my tail off to lose the weight and be able to dep in the delayed entry program, and finally ship off to boot camp. In the process, he found out I had a degree. And he said, I need you to be an officer. And I'm like, nah, you know what? I think I'm going to go the enlisted route. So that's exactly what I did. I did 5 years enlisted, all that time spent on 2nd Tank Battalion out there in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Rose to the ranks of PFC to sergeant, held the billets of driver, loader, and gunner. And then ultimately I was a section leader. And then one day, the battalion executive officer came in the office and said, "Hey, Sergeant Valesek, you have a degree." Yes, sir. I've always had a degree. You need to be an officer. I'm not really sure I want to do that. That's exactly why I need to be an officer. So he assigned 2 lieutenants to put my package together for OCS. I didn't tell the wife, and I failed to mention that to her. Lo and behold, a couple months later, it came out that I was accepted to OCS, and I ended up moving to Virginia, and spent my officer time mostly out in California with 1st Tank Battalion, and then did a PCA to 4th Tank Battalion. Served as the instructor, which is a reserve unit. Fantastic experience all the way around. And then post divestment, moved up here to Virginia, currently serving with the Defense Threat Protection Agency, working in the country of Africa. So that's a pretty quick summary of my military background.
Yeah, I got military schooled throughout that. I love it. And you mentioned areas and communities we're familiar with. And so let's go back a second, because I love this. Anyone can learn from this. So you technically were rejected because of your weight.
Correct.
And then there was a time where they said, okay, if you really want this, you're going to have to change the dynamics of how you're living. We're not going to make this a 101 for nutrition and weight loss and everything else, but can you give us a kind of an insight on, we know what your motivation was, but how you got to that next step?
Bariatric doctor, meeting with them every week, and through a very severe regimen of eating exactly what was on the diet plan, as well as being closely monitored by the doctor. Spent an entire year just solely focused on that. Was working in corporate America. I was relatively successful. I was working for a engineering recruiting firm as a recruiter. Eventually, when I left, I was a branch manager. And at 23 years old, my life was set, but I was not happy. And when the feeling that I had the day that those towers fell was a feeling that I'd never want to have again in my life. And I knew I had to do something, and I chose the Marine Corps.
Yeah. Wow. And, we didn't even talk about this before, but we're coming up on, unfortunately, the 20th year anniversary of that time, that unprecedented events that happened. Obviously, that created passion within you and still does, and still that today. Can you give us any insight of maybe when times got tough through the military or whatever, of what you drew from on that?
So because I was, heavy going into the boot camp, they, whenever they did individual military education or, basically quarter decking, when the drill instructors would call you up there, and I obviously knew I was going every time. And one of the sergeant drill instructors looked at me and he said, "You're too old to be here." And he was really trying to break my spirit. And I just looked at him and I said, "I want to be a Marine, and this is all I want to do, sir." And continue to push up through the mess I had made on the floor. So through the sweat, through the tears, and through everything else that happened, I was just continued pushing. And that got me through boot camp. Fast forward, 31 years old, going through OCS, obviously, right on the cusp of being, age limitation. And, when my fellow, young lieutenants were going out, on the weekends, I was sitting in the shower trying to rehabilitate and have my muscles heal. So twice I was challenged. Twice I was pushed to the absolute brink of my physical ability. And here I am today. I will tell you that courage-wise, courage is one of our tenets. Courage happened going to boot camp. Courage happened to go into OCS. Going into combat, yes, there was a little bit of that, but honestly, being able to be there with my brothers and people that we have trained for all this time, it really didn't require a whole lot of courage because we were doing our job, and it was something that I had sworn to do, and I actually got the opportunity to do that, and that was one of the pinnacle moments of my life was being there online, doing what tankers do.
I love it because so many times in life we factor in our own limitations. Someone else tells us we're too fat. Someone else tells us that we're too old. And it's interesting in your short career, well, it's not short, we're on 17 years now, but early on and often you heard, well, hey, you're too old for this, or hey, you shouldn't be doing this. And obviously your passion pushed you through the courage to drive past that. Any other insight you could give to someone if they're listening to this, and maybe they're not even in the military, but they wanted to start a new business or they wanted to do X, Y, Z, and other people are telling them, hey, you're too old or you can't do it?
So I'll use my YouTube channel as an example of that. That's a more recent example. I focused on, so I was going through a master's program through Liberty University. And everywhere I looked, everyone said you had to have an online profile. You had to have video out there. You had to have content out there. That is the new way of being noticed. That is the new avenue for success. But I was timid. Surprisingly, I'm a Marine. I've been there, done that. But I was timid when it came to being on camera. And I focused on, the equipment. I focused on the audio. I focused on all these different reasons as to why I shouldn't do it. And then one day I came across a post by a gentleman out of Australia. And he said, if you have a story to tell, it is your obligation to tell the story. And that really kind of transcends a whole lot of different areas. And it starts with step one. Take the first step. And his thing was, doesn't matter what camera you use, doesn't matter what audio you use, get on camera, film it. You can use your phone and just tell your story. The message is more important than all the mechanics. And that's really the story, that's really been my story through life, is that, I've been told multiple times, you can't do this. You shouldn't do this. You're too fat, like you said, too old. It's just a matter of doing it. Take the first step, and then it's one step at a time. And it's literally one step at a time. I got through some of the toughest periods of my life, one step at a time.
Can you share with us, for many, maybe they're not even in the military, and it's been fun. I come from a Navy family. Don't hold that against us. and
we're all shipmates.
That's right. We had a chance to speak with many people in the different branches. Obviously, you chose Marines. Well, let me ask you that. Why did you choose the Marines as opposed to any of the other branches?
Because the Air Force office was closed. No, I'm joking. No, honestly, my father and I had opened up a miniature golf course in Pennsylvania, and the recruiter was around the miniature golf course. So I got to know him, and I kind of walked in his office one day and was like, hey, tell me about this Marine Corps thing. And he didn't think I was talking about myself. And I'm like, I am. He goes, well, how old are you? I'm like, I'm 20. At the time I was 25. I'm like, I'm 25. He's like, you look like you're 40. I'm like, yeah, thanks. And that's when we had the whole, you got to lose weight conversation and all that.
Yeah.
And really once I learned about what the Marine ethos is, honor, courage, and commitment, the leadership principles, the leadership traits. And I really didn't plan on being a tanker. When I went to what we call Marine combat training, where we receive our military occupational specialties, I was open contract. And then I sat there and they said, Valesek tanks. I'm like, oh, that's cool. What kind of tanks? Propane tanks, gas tanks, fuel tanks? They're like, no, dummy. main battle tanks. And from that point on, I became absolutely in love with the vehicle, became in love with the platform. There is no greater feeling in the world than tanking. Doesn't matter what billet, doesn't matter what assignment. When you're inside that beast and you're going full tilt and you're firing that main cannon and you're rocking and rolling with those machine guns, there is no greater feeling. That is absolute bliss.
Wow. And within that tank, you mentioned that you've kind of served in all the roles. What's your favorite?
I mean, I got to say tank commander. I mean, I just have to, just because it's the most, in my opinion, it's one of the most challenging roles. Very close second was gunner, though. I loved gunning. Because the ability to just sit there and, identify targets and follow the fire commands and follow the instructions and then see that result. I mean, it's a great feeling as well. But being a tank commander, you have to be able to think, very quickly, process a lot of information. You wear a headset similar to this, and you have 2 different radios with 6 different channels per radio. And you got to be able to, hear, process, communicate. Plus you have to command your crew. Plus, if you're a section leader or even a platoon commander or a company commander, you have to be able to command that section, command that platoon, command that company. And it's just an absolute challenge. And it's something that really sets you up for the rest of your life, because that is information flow at its fastest. And you need to be decisive, make very quick decisions. And then not only that, but communicate those decisions in a very articulate manner.
Oh, absolutely. How many people are part of the crew within the tank?
There's 4 in an M1A1.
4.
In the Abrams, there's 4. So you have the driver, the loader, the gunner, and then the tank commander.
Wow. Yeah. And I love what you said as far as the transition to all of these skill sets could be used in life. If you picked out the top 3 skill sets that you've acquired simply as being, well, not simply, but as being a tank commander and in the other positions, what would you say are 3 life lessons that will help you now and even others listening?
Being decisive, making a decision. And even sometimes if it's the wrong decision, making a decision is better than making no decision at all. Because if you're wrong, you can be corrected. If you don't make a decision, there's nothing to correct. So that's probably the first one. Second one is the ability to communicate. You have to be able to communicate on the radio. You have to be able to get your thoughts from your brain into your mouth and in such a fashion that people understand it and are able to action upon it appropriately.
Yeah. And what would be a third one?
A third one would probably just be able to think critically across multiple platforms. So like I mentioned, you're not only commanding your tank as a tank commander, you need to know each one of those billets, each one of those assignments, each one of those jobs, explicitly, because if your loader makes a mistake, it's ultimately the commander's responsibility to keep the crew safe. So if that loader didn't close that ammo door prior to firing that weapon system, it can be a catastrophic failure. So knowing yourself and then knowing your team and understanding each role, and really as a prior enlisted tanker who ultimately became a tank officer, there was nothing that I've ever asked any of my Marines to do that I have not already done. And that's not in theory, that's not in school. That's literally, I have done all of those things. Because of that, I think it set me up for the ability to be a good commander, and a good leader. Just only because I had an appreciation of what those Marines were doing. So when I asked them to do something, I knew what it meant that I was asking them to do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you've walked those shoes before, and I'm sure that helped your leadership as well. I mean, that level of accountability you're holding them to, for you to be able to have lived that position, right?
Absolutely.
And for them to know that and have seen that. Go ahead, Jim.
There's one more aspect that I'd like to bring out, and the fact that I trusted my staff NCOs explicitly, because I never made it to the rank of staff sergeant. However, I was around a lot of them, and as an NCO, the staff NCOs are paramount. And because of that, I gained a true appreciation for the subject matter expertise that those staff non-commissioned officers bring. So I was somebody that always welcomed and encouraged. And it was really, yes, I was the commander at times, but it was never my decision. It was always our decision. And we made the decision together. And there were times where I had to be commander, and I did. But most of the time it was, hey, what do you all think of this? How else can we think about this project? How else can we, think about this problem? And that's something that is really, I think, lost, from what I know of the civilian world. I had a civilian career prior to being a Marine, so I can speak of corporate America. And very often leaders get in positions where, hey, it's my way or no way. that is no way to live. That is no way to lead. And because of that, I think I've enabled my Marines to be around me to be better leaders themselves.
Oh yeah. If we can, let's focus on two things that you've brought up. One is trust. The other is accountability. And so as people are listening to this and they're thinking through in their own careers and management and even in the office, what do you think is a core component for generating trust in the quickest possible time, right? I mean, obviously trust gets developed over time, but what do you think is a key for that?
Trusting yourself has to be the starting point. You have to trust yourself. You have to know where very often we lie to ourselves. I am not a very strong PT, or is what we call them, physical fitness. I know that that's something I need to challenge myself with. And because of that, I know where my limitations lie. So the first thing is to trust yourself. I know where my strong points are. I know where my weaknesses are. And I never try to hide either one because I'm very proud of who I am, but I'm also know that there are things that I need to work on. Because of that, I'm able to be genuine and honest to my team. And my Marines know who I am. And because of that, they're very often to open up to me. So therefore, I learn them on a different level than others do. So when I know my Marines and know the platoon, that's how we develop trust. I trust them in turn, I earn their trust because they trust me. And it all begins with really trusting yourself. As far as accountability goes, I'm blessed. Being a Marine officer and working with the people that I've worked with in the past, and now working in a civilian agency where they're, for the most part, they're all from different services, but generally they're all absolute consummate professionals. I've been raised in a community. The Army community in the United States Marine Corps is a community of professionals. Because of that, accountability really isn't that serious of an issue, because we know that, it's very simple. The tank requires 4 crewmen to run. The platoon requires 16 plus all the supporting elements. If any one person doesn't do their job, that job doesn't go away. It just has to become absorbed by somebody else. But now you're asking somebody else to do their job plus whatever it is that you're slacking on. So therefore, accountability is something that tankers do because there is nobody else. And when we're rolling out there as a section of tanks, because Marine Corps won't roll with single tank, we're always with another section. We know that we can trust each other, and we know that we have accountability towards each other because you need each other to survive. And that is something that is very different from what I've experienced in the civilian world, because very often people can hide in the shadows. Very often people can, not put forth 100% because the job's going to get done regardless. And then all of a sudden you have somebody come out of the woodwork and say, hey, well, that was a great job. Good job, team. Well, really, you're not talking about a team. You're talking about 2 or 3 individuals that just busted your tail, the rest of which are getting credit for it. That doesn't happen that often in the Marine Corps. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
In the Marine Corps, particularly the armored community, there is a very specific role that each person has to do. And very quickly you identify who is not doing that role, and the pieces have to be picked up by somebody.
So let me ask you this, and I love that. If we make you wear a different hat, and let's just pretend today you're in the civilian world again, and you have to create higher level of accountability, and you're running a company, and you're noticing that not everyone's carrying the same weight, right? And other people haven't, just like you mentioned, other people having to pick up the ball. What is something, if someone's listening to this and they're in that situation as a leader, what would you recommend they do first?
So one of the things we do in the Marine Corps is counselings, and we do quarterly counselings, and then we do fitness reports, which are annual, or in some cases semi-annual. Whenever I have an individual that is struggling, number one, they should not find out that they're struggling during that counseling. That's openers. If I am not counseling them throughout, and I am not identifying those weaknesses, those areas in which they can improve throughout, and sometimes it's daily, sometimes it's hourly. And if I really have somebody that's struggling, I need to know the reason why. Either there's normally an external component that is causing them to fail, because I honestly believe the majority of people, if not every person, doesn't want to fail. I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I want to fail.
You're right.
So when they do fail as a leader, let's find out why. Are you having, issues at home? Are you having financial issues? Are you having, what is going on? And then as a leader, it's my job to try to figure out, hey, maybe you need a day off. Hey, you know what? That's fine. We'll figure it out. Take a day off. Maybe there's something, medically going on with one of their family members. How can we help you? So really that kind of starts there. But then if I've done all of that and I've counseled them and they know where they stand, when that counseling sheet comes out, they're not going to be surprised. And 9 times out of 10, I have them provide to me their own self-counseling. And when you have to do a self-counseling and you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm not doing very well. That is that's more powerful than having, leadership, bosses, boards, doesn't matter, come down and say to you, hey, you're not doing well. That self-acknowledgement, I think, is a driving force. And that's what I do as a leader is I have them analyze themselves. And I flip the table. Hey, if you were sitting in my seat and you had to write this counseling, what would you say about yourself? And be honest. So I think that is a technique that I use that has been very successful up until now. And I think I think it'll translate to the civilian world.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. We call it self-authoring or self-discovery, right? Where there's a recognition of, okay, maybe I'm going to take accountability instead of the victim mentality, right? Of what do I personally need to change to achieve at a higher level? When we talk about the full person, we talk about mind, body, and spirit. And I loved how we kind of started the conversation with, okay, you had to get in shape. What did that look like? And if you don't mind, share with people, kind of in a COVID world, everyone's trying to rearrange their home and they're trying to figure out, well, how do I work out consistently? What does it look like if I don't want to go into a gym? Can you share what you've done? You mentioned that you've kind of reorchestrated a home gym workout facility, right?
Absolutely. Well, first it starts with the house. And I'm going to embarrass you a little bit here, James. The Nellis Group was able to find and this is not a plug. James did not ask me to do this, although I am going to do it. The Nellis Group found me a house during the COVID environment. I was down in Georgia, and I didn't move because of the tankified divestment. I moved because of personal reasons, specifically the health of my parents. I needed a house that we could turn into a multi-generational home. And the Nellis Group, through James and Cameron, found me a home. And we bought this home sight unseen because during COVID, I was not permitted through DOD to travel. So therefore, I had no ability. So through FaceTime videos, et cetera, I really put my trust into these gentlemen, and they performed beyond my expectations. So in the basement of this house we have now, there was a gym. Wasn't a very good gym, needed some work. So I redid the flooring, and I put together a home gym that is focused on my rehabilitation post my injury. I had a back injury that was pretty severe. And because of that, I was able to put in their devices, namely a rower, an elliptical, a treadmill, and then some free weights and some Olympic bumpers, as well as a teeter table in that gym. And we've taken a bedroom, turned it into a gym. And because of that, I am now able to work out in my house on my own time, doing the exercises that are built for me. And obviously my family uses it as well. I should not just say that. But I'm the one that did the work. I'm the one that kind of designed it. So they reap my benefits, but it was really built, in the COVID environment as a way for me to continue my rehabilitation.
I love it. And you're reaching a high level of success, and thank you for your time today. Can you, for someone trying to figure out, okay, I want to be more successful in my life, and perhaps some of that comes with discipline and regiment, what in your world is a perfect day for you?
So one of the interviews that I did was a gentleman that in our community is, we call him the Godfather, because most of the interviewees that I've interviewed up to this point have mentioned this individual as being a source of inspiration.
Oh, wow.
And I asked a similar question to him, and he gave an answer that I have to remember for the rest of my life, and I will. Winners learn how to win. It doesn't matter if the stakes are against you. It doesn't matter. No excuse is anything out there that you should kind of focus on. Stop looking for excuses, figure out how to win, and win, no matter what it is.
I love that. Winners learn how to win. Now, we did some reading on CEOs and people that are reaching a high level of success. And let me ask you this. When do you work out on a consistent basis? Is it in the morning or the evening?
Having a home gym is one of those things that kind of is a double-edged sword, because I close my rings every day, and I continue to challenge myself through that. So if it's 11:30 and I need a 30-minute workout and I don't have it and my rings need to be closed, 11:31, I'm down there rowing, or I'm down there running on the elliptical. I'm doing something. So ideally, it would be in the morning. But being that I work, in Africa, a lot of the times my mornings are consumed because that's obviously their afternoons. So I don't really have a set schedule. I wish I did, but I really don't. I would say that 9 times out of 10, it's in the evening.
Yeah, there's a quote that we've used before in our podcast, which is that the difference between you today and 5 years from now are the people you surround yourself with and the books that you read. And I didn't give you this as a forewarning, but can you share with us whether it's leadership or accountability or just general success? Can you recommend 2 or 3 books that have had a profound influence in your life?
Well, right now I'm reading Unfortunate Sons, which is a tank book written by Sergeant Joe Tyson, and he's a Vietnam veteran, and he really kind of did a very good job going through and kind of telling his story as coming from a troop all the way up into an NCO, and then ultimately as a tank commander in Vietnam. So I would say that's one. Probably. Oh gosh, excuse me for 1 second. Oh, there we go. Another great book that I've read recently is The Noticer by Andy Andrews.
Oh, okay.
And that's a book that kind of works on self-improvement, and it has a lot of different leadership principles in it, and it's a very interesting story about Mr. Jones. Andy Andrews is a fantastic author. That's one I've read, and then one that I continue to read only because it's ridiculously long is Diplomacy by Henry Kissinger.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I'm kind of all over the spectrum as far as the types of books I like to read.
I love
And
it.
of course, I like James Patterson too. So.
Oh, sure. Yeah, he has some great reads. Let me thank you for that. I didn't know you were gonna do that. We appreciate that as a family-run real estate company. Thank you for your experience during COVID and for the kind words. I did want to promote your own podcast. So you have one. Can you share with them where they could find it and what it's called?
Sure. It's on YouTube. It's called 100 Years of Marine Corps Tankers. And what it is it's 1923 to 2023. This is post-divestment decision of the United States Marine Corps to divest of all armor in the Marine Corps. And as a armor community, as you can imagine, that was a very difficult decision. One that we certainly respect and, would never challenge the decision. However, as a community, it's tough to fold up the flags and fold up 100 years of history and legacy, particularly since Marine Corps tanks have been involved in every major conflict since World War II. And it's 100 years of Marine Corps tankers. We started out in July of 2020, July 8th to be exact. And what it was while I was going through my master's program in Liberty, everywhere I went said that you needed to have an online profile. You need to have video out there. You have content out there, and a way of doing that. So so July 8th is the first day that I did the very first message. And how it came about was doing my master's program through Liberty University, and everywhere you looked, every class I had said you had to have an online profile. You had to have video out there. You had to have content out there. And I started on LinkedIn doing my own story, but I very quickly became very annoyed by my own voice and very tired and very bored of my own story. So I decided, one day in the shower, literally, I have an entire community of tanks and tankers, and the entire armor community of the United States Marine Corps can tell their story. And I have the ability, I have the knowledge to put together, a YouTube. I guess it's considered a vlog. Yeah. But I had no preparation, no forethought, no nothing. I literally put out a 1-minute video saying, "Hey, tankers, this is a tough year. If you want to come on and tell your story, I'm doing a channel. Contact me." And next thing you know, people did. And 41 episodes later, almost a full year later, we're still going and growing. And I've had a absolute amazing experience throughout the whole process. I've interviewed folks from NCO all the way up until full bar colonels. Trying to get a general on right now, and the span of generations that we have on the channel go all the way back prior to the Vietnam era, and we go all the way from Vietnam all the way up until current day, and it's just been an amazing experience.
I love that. Absolutely check that out. And now, JR, I don't let any of our guests know this. We're now going to go through a list of favorites, and it's fun. What you're going to have to do is just first thing that comes to mind. We don't want you to think about it, just first thing that comes to mind. So are you ready?
I am.
All right. Favorite season?
Summer.
Okay. Favorite musical artist? First thing that comes to mind.
Dave Matthews came to mind, but I'm not sure he's my favorite.
Okay. Favorite song?
Renegade.
Favorite cartoon?
Bugs Bunny.
Favorite movie?
Top Gun.
Favorite book?
Howard Stern.
Favorite podcast?
What was the name of that one?
Oh, you should say yours.
No, that'd be very selfish. No, the one about the murderer. Oh gosh, I can't.
Is that Serial?
Yes, Serial.
Nice. Favorite president?
Lincoln.
And favorite quote?
Everything comes to him who hustles while he waits, by Thomas Edison.
Love it. Love it. JR, thank you again, sir. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for your service. Thank you for the inspiration you are for me and many others. And we look forward to hearing more from you and even tuning into your own podcast.
James, thank you so much for having me on today. Like I mentioned before, this has been a great experience. I wish you the absolute success with this podcast. I know you're going to do great. And I really look forward to seeing all the interviews that you do. And it's been my pleasure and my honor coming on today. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for joining us for the Legacy Elevated podcast, where we reveal the ways to impact the world and leave a legacy that empowers the next generation. Follow us at Legacy Elevated on YouTube and Instagram. And if you have a business that can inspire others, reach out to us today.